A crossover episode with Locked On Northwestern Wildcats. You're absolutely going to want to stick around with this. Carter is giving us the news when it comes to the need-to-know information with Northwestern and the hometown Minnesota Evan Hull running back out of this world. We're going to learn about it today and more with him right now.
Hey, you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, we're doing a crossover episode with the host of Locked On Wildcats and covering Northwestern. I don't want to hold you up any further than that, besides to let you know to hit subscribe on YouTube so you can get in tune for all of these videos and more, so we can get your thoughts, your feedback, and all that good stuff. So be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, and wait no further, let's jump in. Welcome in, folks. We have a crossover Locked On Northwestern Wildcats and Locked On Golden Gophers. We got to do it. We got to give you the best of both worlds here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Are you excited, Carter?
I am, man. I am. I always enjoy having these crossover episodes. I think it gives our fan bases kind of a unique look at kind of both teams and gives you a full, all-encompassing picture. And I'm glad to be here today, man.
Yeah, man, I'm here for it. I'm excited for it. So we're going to do this show. We're going to have some questions from the Northwestern side of things, and then we'll do the second. We'll do the reverse, vice versa, and get it both ways. So let's kick this thing off. Let's dive in.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start first, then I'll ask some questions here, and kind of want to start out like this season feels so interesting for Minnesota because it started so red hot and blowing the doors off everybody. Then you kind of got in that little rut in the middle, and then you figured it out here the past couple weeks. Maybe last week wasn't the prettiest of wins. Kind of where are Minnesota fans right now? What's the temperature of how this season has gone?
Boy, that is the money question right there, because if you polled fans, you'd probably get a 50% reaction of everyone freaking out and panicking and saying this is a failure and PJ Fleck is crazy and he's failed in year 6 and all that. And then you get some realistic folks that are like, look, we dropped games we shouldn't have, but the sky is not falling. There's still ways to get right and have a successful season. There's still the tiniest, slimmest chance that they could walk away with the West. Now, am I counting on that? No, but there's still hope. You can still have a successful season with possibly 10 wins if you go out here and win out and get a bowl game. So, you know, it's your typical reaction from fans. It's either everything is terrible and we should fire everyone, or there's some realism to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to talk about slim scenarios where a team can come away with the Big Ten West. I still think there's like a 1 in a billion like scenario where Northwestern can win it at 4-8. But kind of, I know that there's been some injury issues this year with Minnesota. Some big names have kind of been in and out of the lineup. Chris Ottman-Bell's he's out for the whole season. How has that kind of altered the trajectory of the season, and how did that play into that 3-game losing streak in the middle of the schedule?
I definitely think it had a major impact. I think that maybe it's an impact that people haven't realized as much as how much of a threat Chris Ottman-Bell was for us in the passing game, especially because it's not like he was just a niche receiver that only could do good route running or only could do 50-50 balls. Like, he was a full package, complete receiver that helped the other receivers that complemented him. So when we needed something in a big spot, needed a big play, that was Tanner Morgan's go-to. That was the man he trusted, and things would just happen. So the fact that that got taken away, then when you start to find the adversity, you start to find the difficulties after that Michigan State game, when you start playing some tougher defenses and the confidence goes down, you don't have that security blanket, and it impacts how the offense runs. Now, when we can't pass the ball and the quarterback doesn't have trust in receivers and things like that, and they can add an extra hat to the box to try to stop the run game, that makes things a lot more difficult. And that's where we saw a lot of issues, self-inflicted wounds in that 3-game losing streak that hopefully they've slowly been correcting and building that confidence back up. We've been seeing it gaining, especially with that backup quarterback, Ethan Kaliakmanis, coming in last week. Gophers fans got really excited because it felt like the passing game came back.
There you go. Well, that's kind of been the story of the week, hasn't it? The starting quarterback has not been announced. So if you were going to, I guess, make a bet on who starts, who is it, and how does that change the dynamic of this game?
Man, it is the question for sure. And I think if you ask Gophers fans what they want, they would say they want Ethan Kaliakmanis in there. And I would too, just based on what he did last week, but also you got to prep for next season. He's going to be the guy next year. And our schedule next year has Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, North Carolina. Those are some big opponents that you don't want to throw a quarterback out there who hasn't gotten some real, true, tested experience in there. So I'm hoping, and if I had to put money down, if I had to say, you know what, here's $10, my best bet is Ethan. I think Ethan is the guy here because the cat's out of the bag. He went off last week. He sparked at least new life into the offense in that second half, and it opened up the ground game for Mo once there was the threat of the quarterback running, which Ethan brings to the table. But also the intermediate and deep shots that we saw from him were far greater. The percentage in plays past the 9 yards or past the line of scrimmage was a complete 360. I mean, I believe Ethan's passes, he was like 60 or more percent that were 10 yards or further. In Tanner's passes in that game, I believe 75% were from the line of scrimmage to 9 yards. So like, it's just a completely different passing game with Ethan in there. And I think now that it's the cat's out of the bag and we've seen it firsthand, if he goes back to Tanner, although Tanner has done so much for this team, I think you're going to really rile up this fan base.
Fair enough. Speaking of, you mentioned Mo Ibrahim in there. He's having another heck of a year. I believe he's hit 100 yards in every game. Like, how much of a difference maker is he? And it feels like kind of as he goes, the offense goes.
Oh, absolutely. Mo being back from that Achilles injury has been major for this team. I like to call him Mamba Mo. He came back from the Achilles just like Kobe Bryant did. So that's how important he is to this team. How Kobe was to the Lakers, that's how important Mo Ibrahim is to this offense, because running in the ground and pound game is the heart of this team. Yes, you want to get more vertical passing game going to open that up, but when it comes to what PJ Fleck's team has been in his time, it's the run game, it's ground and pound, and Mo just does it different. He always is falling forward for extra yards. He's always breaking tackles or making people miss tackles. And even though he might not get an 80-yard touchdown run, he'll likely pop off for 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, 5 yards, and then get like a 20-yard gain. And so it's just like he wears teams down.
Kind of shifting focus to the other side of the ball, I guess this will be my last question because we've spent most of the time talking about the offense. But the Minnesota defense, in a lot of stats, they're unbelievable, like top 10 in the country in some places. But then you have some stats like sacks and tackles for a loss. How are they managing to be so good on defense without forcing that many negative plays? And then who are some people that Northwestern fans should keep an eye on in this one on Saturday?
Yeah, the secondary has been a huge strong suit for this Gophers team. They call it the no-fly zone, and it has been that. It has been very tight when it comes to coverage. And so I think that's how they've been able to thrive, even though we haven't had very much success in creating pressure, is that we're getting a lot of coverage sacks. We're getting a lot of, basically the quarterback doesn't have any options. And then even though he has 10 seconds of time, he's not having anybody open. He's forcing bad passes, bad decisions, and that helps the Gophers get off the field quicker. The biggest issue where the Gophers had problems, especially in that losing streak, was the lack of pressure. And then when people found success in the quick passing game and would force missed tackles. So that is the key against this Gophers defense. If you can force missed tackles and you can get that quick passing game going, you might have more success than some of those other teams that weren't able to get that. Names to keep in mind: definitely the safety pairing of Tyler Nubin and Jordan Howden. I think they're the best safety combo in the Big Ten. Tyler Nubin's going to play on Sundays. That dude is special. The DBs are pretty good. Terrell Smith, aka T-Time, is our best man coverage cornerback out there. So whoever that best wide receiver is, you'll probably see Terrell on him for most of the game. But really, you can attack this D-line as far as we don't create pressure and we don't get sacks. So if you can find a way to stretch the quick passing game, you might find success.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that kind of sums it up on my end as far as the questions that I have. But yeah, no, I think that's definitely some fascinating things to keep an eye on from a Northwestern perspective.
Yeah, and we're definitely, I got to get the flip side of this going too. But first, we got to talk to you about our friends over at Upside. They're sponsoring this episode and bringing it to you. And so, you pay for gas, you pay for groceries. Why not get money back on those things? If you're going to go to a restaurant, if you're going to get groceries, you can get money back by using the Upside app. All you have to do to get started is download the free Upside app, use promo code LOCKED, and you'll get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. All you have to do is go through the process just like you normally would using your card and whatnot. And when you're buying on Upside, hit the check-in at the business and pay as usual. It's that simple. So download the free app at Upside and then use promo code LOCKED and you'll get $5 back on your first purchase of $10 or more. It's a steal. I don't know why you wouldn't. Carter, I think you do it. I do it. They should do it as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's flip sides here. Let's talk about what the Gophers fans need to know about Northwestern. Now, from the quick research, the quick facts that I was doing with this Northwestern team, let's talk about defense first. It seems like Northwestern's run defense isn't very good. Is that putting it lightly? Or I guess, does Mo Ibrahim and the process of him scare you off, or what is the concern with that run defense?
When I've watched them this year, it just it's really interesting because in certain spots, they kind of bow up and show that they have some fight to them in the run game. I mean, against Nebraska in the opener, even last week. I mean, you had CJ Stroud, who never runs the ball. Finally, he kept some on the read option and ran a bootleg or two in there and ripped off some big runs. But for most of the game, they made Mayan Williams kind of earn it the whole way. And it was a physical kind of grinded out game. Granted, the weather and the wind helped Northwestern kind of stay in that game. But I think what I've noticed is the only team that I feel like has just blown Northwestern apart straight up the middle has really been Iowa. But teams have had a lot of success when they've found a way to get to the edge, because there's a lack of speed, especially in that second level with the linebackers. If you get them running sideline to sideline, you can get the edge and you can rip off really, really, really big runs. And that's kind of been the story. I mean, the Maryland game, they hung in there the whole way and then allowed the 75-yard touchdown run that was the dagger, the kind of stake through the heart in that one. But I think that when you run right at them, they're not maybe as bad as the numbers would say. I wouldn't say that they're good. When you run right at them, you're going to see Bryce Gallagher make a ton of tackles. He's already close to 100 tackles this year. And I mean, he had a game a couple weeks ago, I believe, where he had 16 tackles. I mean, he's kind of the go-to guy in the middle of the defense, but that's kind of how I see it. You can run on them, especially if you find a way to get to the edge.
Okay. And then how about pressure wise? Has Northwestern found success in that sack production in creating pressure on the quarterback? I feel like that's been Minnesota's weakness, especially with Tanner in there, not as mobile. If the pressure gets there, that's when this team struggles offensively. So how has the pressure been for Northwestern's defense?
It maybe hasn't been exactly what I was hoping coming into the year. Out of Tamawa, out of Barre, he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list, and I would have thought he would have maybe posted a number closer to like 7 sacks, but he's sitting at 4. He's probably the best at coming off the edge, but at times it feels like he tries to kind of go power rush moves and maybe doesn't get as far against some really big tackles. And then you've got Ryan Johnson second on the team with just 2 sacks, so there's not a lot of sack production. It's pretty similar to Minnesota. I think I was looking at the stats yesterday, I believe, and not a lot of sack production. The linebackers have a few, and then you have Cam Mitchell, the star corner, kind of he has one as well on a blitz, but the defensive line, not a lot of production in terms of sacks at all. And that's
music. That's music to any Gophers fans' ears. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to hear. So
it's a weakness
at least
for sure.
You're taking some stress off of the fans' hearts over here. But let's flip to the offense. We have to talk about the Minnesota native running back, Evan Hull. It seems like he absolutely was going ballistic to start the season, and it seems like it might have slowed down over the course. What's going on with the run game, and what are you expecting coming into this one?
Well, they're going to feed him because he's far and away the best player on the offense. His start was blazing, absolutely blazing. It was really fun to watch. He was good in week 0. He was good in week 2 against Duke. Actually, against Duke, he had one of the weirdest stat lines I've ever seen. I think he had like 17 rushes for 65 yards, and then maybe he had a touchdown if I recall, but he had 14 receptions for 213 yards in that game. And literally, they just decided, okay, we're going to throw it to Evan Hull almost every play, and he put the team on his back, brought him all the way back from a 21-0 deficit, and then my heart broke for him. He's diving across the goal line to tie the game as time expires, and he fumbles at the half-yard line into the end zone, and Duke fell on it to seal that win. And that's, I mean, to be honest with you, that's kind of the story of the offense. The offense finds a way to have really inopportune turnovers. And when they happen, they kind of happen in bunches. They've had a fumbling issue this year for sure. But really what kind of stalled it out was when Ryan Helinski started really, really well. When against Nebraska in that game in Dublin was the best that we'd seen him. And then even against Duke, it was pretty good. I mean, and so you had this feeling of, even when he was at South Carolina, even in year 1 at Northwestern, this was a version of Ryan Helinski we had not seen. He was comfortable back behind the offensive line. He had time. He was going through his progressions. He was on time, on target. He even talked about how there was like no stress back there for him. And then the Southern Illinois game happened against a defense that to that point was allowing 380 passing yards a game, and he was just rattled. And the passing game has never really been the same since that point.
That was definitely my question, because I feel like if you look at where Northwestern's passing offense ranks within the country, it's higher than I was expecting. But does that come from that early success then? Because
definitely. I think a decent amount. I mean, at one point, I think through maybe 3 or 4 weeks of the year, they were number 1 in the country also in plays run. They were running like 87 or 89 plays a game. So they at least give Northwestern some credit. They were trying to change the identity of what the offense has been for so long. And Helinski, I mean, he threw for 300 plus yards against Nebraska. He threw for 400 plus against Duke. And then he kind of came crashing down to earth, started turning the ball over a bunch. And that's when they turned the reins over to Brendan Sullivan, who he may not be as as true of a pocket passer, but when he does throw it, he's been pretty decent. I don't think he's a guy you're going to see go out there and throw for 300 yards, but he is more of a dual threat guy. And then, of course, last week, the run game got going again because they ran Wildcat for what felt like 80% of the offensive snaps, and it was every snap Brendan Sullivan was under center, it felt like, and then he would sprint out to the receiver spot, and it'd be a direct snap. And look, I mean, they're going to run the ball a ton. It may not have a lot of success, but they know Evan Hull is the best player on the offense. They know Cam Porter is a guy that they like a lot. Even Andrew Clare, the third string running back, he's a captain on this team. He's a guy that in different moments this year has had a little bit of success. This offense runs through the running backs and this offensive line that's shuffled around, but does have a decent amount of experience up front.
All right, so my final question for you on the Northwestern side is, in order for Northwestern to pull an upset here and get the victory against Minnesota, who is the player that has to step up and put the team on their back?
Oh, I would say you really need a breakout game, I feel like, out of a guy like Donnie Navarro. He's been a kind of short pass like receiver, has not gotten. He's the clear number 2 behind Malik Washington. Was previously at Illinois, and before that, I'm drawing a blank. He was in an FCS school, and he transferred into Illinois, then ended up at Northwestern. He's somebody that he's gonna be back there in the return game, returning punts. If he can flip the field a couple times, if he can make a few big catches, and help the pass game get going, Northwestern should be able to maybe hang in better than some people expect. But every time I say that, it gets flipped on its head. Like the Iowa game. I was like, this is a 13-6 ball game all the way. And then they allowed 33 points to a team averaging 14. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story with this team, is that you get an inconsistent week-to-week performance. When they show up, they can fight with you for 60 minutes, but have really forgotten how to win a game since August.
I feel you. Well, I'll kind of let us shift gears into maybe a little bit of Big Ten talk overall.
Well, but first we need to shout out our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hi, and thank you for making both of our podcasts your first listen for anything Northwestern and Minnesota. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, I'm ready, man. Let's kind of talk through this. The Big Ten, that I feel like's a really interesting league, especially in the Big Ten West this year.
Yeah, the West really seemed like it was up for grabs for the most part, but Illinois surprised a lot of people this year, I think. And I think they can almost practically lock up the West if they beat Purdue this week. They would have to lose their next 2 games in order to even give anybody else a shot. Do you think Illinois ends up being the representative for the West, or do you think it could get crazy here? Do you think it's a possibility that Purdue and Michigan both get victories against them in these upcoming matches?
Well, I think Michigan is going to get a win over them for sure. I don't know. I mean, this conference has just been, the Big Ten West has kind of been how maybe not as much for Northwestern, who only has the win over the second to last team in the Big Ten West. But I was like, pretty much anybody can beat anybody in the Big Ten West on any given week, and it's kind of the way I talked about the Big 12 this year as well. I just got a weird feeling that Illinois, kind of the the clock has struck midnight, and maybe they're gonna collapse down the stretch here. I don't know. What do you think?
I would welcome that. That slim chance Gophers fans are holding on to. We need Illinois to lose 2 and Purdue to lose 1 against Northwestern or IU. So if y'all can do that for us, if you can take that mantle on, take them down first, let us win this week. I mean, of course, we got to win out. But if y'all could take Purdue down and then Illinois could lose 2, that would be perfect. Yes. I think in the end, though, Illinois probably comes out of this one.
Yeah, my mind tells me that, but then for some reason I got a weird gut feeling that they're gonna fall apart on us here. But I mean, yeah, y'all obviously have a better chance of making the championship game. I think there's literally everybody has to lose in very specific manners, and Northwestern has to win out, and then there's a scenario where they can get in the Big Ten championship game at 4-8, and I think in that scenario, I was planning it out in my head just for fun. Like, if they go 4-8 and win the Big Ten and then are 5-8, they don't go to a bowl game.
Oh, that would be wild. That would be super wild.
Yeah, I've done research on it. It's never happened where a team has won the conference, had a losing record, and not been able to go to a bowl. But sadly, I don't think that's going to happen.
All right, flipping it to the East then. Who do you think comes out with the crown in the East? Do you think it's Ohio State or do you think it's Michigan? I think it comes down to that final week game probably.
Absolutely. You'd have to have some sort of epic collapse by both of them for it not to come down to them. I have talked myself back and forth on the Ohio State-Michigan thing. Part of me wonders if Michigan's just still built this year to give Ohio State major issues, but at the same time, we haven't really seen a full-strength Ohio State at any point this year.
Mm-hmm.
If they get Jackson Smith and Jigba back, well, now you've got 2 first-round guys on the outside. You've got a bunch of running backs who are really, really good, and you've got a potentially Heisman-winning quarterback, although he may have cracked the door weirdly enough. So I got my other degree from Auburn, and weirdly enough, he cracked the door for freaking Bo Nix to win a Heisman, which is just the most nuts thing ever. But yeah, no, I'm going to go Ohio State because I think they get healthy, and I think that there's revenge on the brain in that game, and I think that they may try to get some payback. How about you? How do you see this playing out?
I'm going to actually run with Michigan on this one. I didn't think I would catch myself saying that, but I feel like Ohio State has had little flashes where they've shown there can be some chinks in the armor. Mm-hmm. And I think Michigan is the team that can capitalize on that. I feel like Michigan's played in some close ones in the halves against Rutgers, like we saw, against Penn State, like we saw. And then all of a sudden,
Rutgers,
that second half.
38-point second half where they got blown out.
That second half in both of that Penn State and the Rutgers games just absolutely blew the doors off. So I feel like they're really good at adjustments in that second half. And I think that game might come down to who can make the best adjustments.
You know what's crazy? I didn't realize this until I saw it today. Ohio State has yet to play a single score game all year long.
That's
not
wild.
A single one has been within a single score. And I think at some point a close game's got to catch them, right?
Right, exactly. And they haven't had to handle that. So that's another point of maybe that just becomes too much for Ohio State.
Fair enough. Right, I think that's a pretty good pick.
I want to ask one question to you real quick, and we can kind of wrap this thing up, even though we could go for hours on this. We could probably go for hours on Big Ten talk, but you'll have to listen to Locked On Big Ten for all of that. The question I have for you is, the season's been rough, and there's been a couple of those for Northwestern. Are you still fully behind Fitzgerald as the coach, or do you think it's time for them to at least open discussion for anybody else?
I mean, there might be discussions, but I come back to coming into the year, my thought process was Fitz. This is the hardest place to win in the Big Ten. It's the hardest place for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one for me, as someone who's also worked in this space as well, Northwestern's the only team in the Big Ten that does not have an NIL collective currently. And you can't survive in the current collegiate sports space without one. I think he's a top 15, top 20 coach. And if they got rid of him, who do they turn to? And like, who's going to do a better job? I think there's going to be extensive changes on the staff, but to me, it would be foolish to get rid of the guy who's literally been the best coach in the history of the program. I think there's 5 total 10-win seasons in Northwestern's history. 3 have been with Fitz as a coach. 1 has been with Fitz as a player. Like, this guy is Northwestern football. If you get rid of him, what's the plan? And I don't think that there would be one. And that's why I think he's going to stay. What about you? How do the fans at Minnesota kind of feel about PJ Fleck? I know you said that it's a little up in the air. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, what are the 2 options here?
If you look at what PJ Fleck has been doing for the Gophers, he's been building this program up and he's changed the expectation. The team expects to try to get that division title now. You couldn't have said that prior to PJ Fleck. We're trying to get bowl game eligible times before that. The team has 14 plus players in the NFL in the last 4 drafts. Like, the development and the progress is there. The recruiting classes might not be top 20 right now, but it's building and it's growing. So the expectations have changed and fans are getting impatient now because now they want Big Ten conference championships and they want to be the contender, which I understand. But at the same time, this point you said about Fitzgerald is very similar to PJ Fleck for me, of who are you going to find that wants to be here in Minnesota, wants to stay, and is not going to get pulled away by the money that will do better. I just don't see it out there. I think that what he's doing and what he's building is great for the program, and it's putting Minnesota at least on the map, and we're getting more looks in different areas. So I'm all for keeping him. I'm all for supporting him and watching it continue to build.
I like that. Well, quickly, we've got a couple minutes here before I think it's going to kick us out, but score prediction, how do you see this thing playing out?
I'm going to go Gophers 24, Northwestern 10. That's what I got for this one.
That's not far off from mine. I said Minnesota 27, Northwestern 13. That's what I've got. So we're close. Just a couple extra field goals in there, and it'll be fun to see how it shakes out on Saturday.
For sure. Well, thank you again for taking the time. Thank you, fans, for listening and making sure that you tune into these crossovers each week, because who else is bringing you content like this? So thank you. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube for both channels and follow wherever you get your podcasts. This is Kane Rob signing off. Carter Byrd signing off. Thanks again. See ya.